The holographic display flickered once, twice, then died completely, leaving Ambassador Vexthara staring at empty air where the Galactic Council's Omninet feed had been streaming moments before. Around the crescent-shaped chamber of Nexus Prime, 11 other species representatives shifted uneasily as their own displays winked out in rapid succession. Technical difficulties, muttered High Arbiter Colonith, his for mandibles clicking in irritation. The insectoid's compound eyes reflected the emergency lighting that had automatically engaged. When the main systems failed, resume the vote. When the vote has already concluded, interrupted Chancellor Murdane, her crystalline form pulsing with an angry orange glow. The silicon-based delegate's voice carried the weight of finality. Earth's extermination was approved 11-1. Only the Veltai abstained. Captain Dante Reeves of the Earth Defense Corps sat motionless in humanity's designated chair, his weathered face betraying nothing despite the death sentence just pronounced upon his species. 27 years of military service had taught him to keep his emotions locked away, even when facing the unthinkable, especially then. The humans have proven themselves a viral threat to galactic stability, continued Murdane, her form shifting to a deeper crimson. In less than 2 centuries since achieving spaceflight, they've colonized 4 to 7 systems, established trade routes that bypass traditional council oversight. At worst of all, they've begun uplifting primitive species without authorization. Vexthara S. Serpentine neck coil with barely contained fury. They'd armed the Corvin, a species that hadn't even developed metallurgy, and these mammals gave them plasma rifles and quantum computers. We shared knowledge, Dante said quietly, his first words since the session began. The Corvin were being enslaved by raiders. We ended that. You disrupted the natural order, shrieked Administrator Thegmori, her avian features ruffling with agitation. The Corvin were meant to serve as laborers for the hegemony. Your interference cost us millions of credits in lost productivity. Dandy's jaw tightened imperceptibly around the chamber. Holographic kill switches that should have displayed the deployment orders for the extermination fleet remained dark. Every delegate's personal communicator showed the same error message: network unreachable. High Arbiter Colonith attempted to access the military command protocols through his neural implant, only to find empty static where the Omninet should have been. What is the meaning of this technical failure? Our systems are quantum encrypted and hardened against any conceivable attack. Any attack you can conceive of, Dante corrected, rising slowly from his chair. The human's calm demeanor began to crack, revealing something far more dangerous beneath. But you never bothered to understand what you were dealing with, did you? The chamber's environmental systems gave a mechanical wheeze and fell silent. Emergency power flickered, casting dancing shadows across alien faces that were just beginning to comprehend their situation. Chancellor Murdane's crystalline structure began to vibrate at a higher frequency, a sign of extreme distress among her species. What have you done? Human, me, nothing at all. Danny's smile held no warmth. But you made one critical error in your calculations. You assumed Earth was defenseless because our fleets couldn't match yours. You assumed we'd beg for mercy or try to negotiate. You never considered that we might have spent the last 50 years learning everything about your technology, your networks, your precious Omninet. The emergency lighting died completely, plunging the chamber into absolute darkness. In the silence that followed, Danny's voice carried clearly to every terrified delegate. You see, we didn't just uplift the Corvin. We learned from them and from every species we've encountered. The Veltai taught us quantum encryption. The Nexari showed us how to build undetectable network parasites. The Jekyllin gave us the tools to turn your own systems against you. His laugh echoed off the chamber walls. You were so busy arguing about whether to kill us, you never noticed we'd already killed your entire civilization. In the depths of space, the Galactic Council's military fleet drifted helplessly as their navigation systems displayed random coordinates and their weapons refused to respond to commands. Across 1,000 worlds, automated systems that controlled everything from life support to food distribution had gone silent. The humans, it seemed, had been preparing for this moment far longer than anyone realized. 3 hours into the blackout, the first riots began on Veltai Prime. Without the Omninet's constant flow of information and automated resource distribution, panic spread through the crystal cities like a plague. Chancellor Murdane's people had grown so dependent on their networked existence that many couldn't remember how to manually operate basic systems. Food synthesizers sat silent, transportation grids locked down, Even the atmospheric processors that maintained breathable air in the underground colonies had gone offline. Aboard the EDF cruiser Defiance Edge, Admiral Petra Voss watched the chaos unfold through intercepted communications. The ship hung in the shadow of Titan, its stealth systems keeping it invisible to the Council fleet that had been assembled to destroy Earth just hours ago. Now that same fleet drifted in the void, their crews frantically trying to regain control of systems that no longer recognized their authority. Admiral, we're receiving surrender requests from 17 Council vessels, reported Lieutenant Commander Kozlov, his fingers dancing across the console that glowed with stolen Nexari technology. Their life support is failing and they can't even plot a course home. Voss studied the tactical display with the cold calculation that had earned her the nickname, the Butcher of Proxima. Gray streak hair framed a face that had seen too many battles, too many necessary evils. Ignore them. Our orders are clear, Mum, with respect. Some of those ships have civilian contractors aboard. Scientists, engineers, who voted to exterminate 8 billion humans. Voss cut him off. I don't recall them showing much concern for our civilians. When they were planning to glass our worlds, the Defiance Edge shuddered as its quantum torpedoes armed themselves. Round them, 12 other EDF vessels to cloak simultaneously, their hulls bristling with weapons that married human ingenuity with alien technology. They had spent decades preparing for this moment, knowing that humanity's survival would eventually depend on their ability to outfight and outthink the galaxy's greatest powers. Target the hegemony dreadnought Sovereign's Wrath, Voss ordered. Let's send a message. The massive Nexari vessel, 3 kilometers of crystalline armor and devastating firepower, hung dead in space like a monument to galactic arrogance. Its crew of 8,000 had voted unanimously for Earth's destruction just hours ago. Now, they couldn't even send a distress signal. Lieutenant Commander Kozlov hesitated. Admiral, that ship is completely defenseless. They can't fight back. Neither could the children on New Geneva when the Council authorized the Corvin raids. Voss replied, her voice devoid of emotion. Neither could the colonists on Kepler Station when the hegemony decided our expansion was inconvenient. Fire. The quantum torpedo streaked across the darkness, its warhead containing enough antimatter to crack a small moon. The Sovereign's Wrath had no shields, no point defense, no way to evade. The explosion lit up the void like a newborn star, and when the light faded, nothing remained but expanding plasma and debris across the fleet. Alien crews watched in horror as humanity announced its intentions with casual brutality. The humans weren't interested in negotiation or mercy. They had been sentenced to extinction, and they were returning the favor with interest. Multiple contacts breaking from the main fleet. Kozlov reported, his voice tight with concentration. Looks like some ships still have partial thruster control. They're trying to scatter. Voss nodded to her weapons officer. Begin the hunt. 1-1 every ship that voted for our destruction. Turn to scrap. No survivors, no prisoners, no witnesses. The EDF fleet spread out like hunted wolves, their hybrid technology giving them overwhelming advantages over the panicked aliens. Human vessels moved with predatory grace, while Council ships wallowed like wounded animals. Their crews reduced to beating on manual controls that hadn't been used in centuries. The heavy cruiser Moral Authority managed to fire a single plasma burst before the EDF destroyer Retribution put 3 kinetic rounds through its engine core. The ship split in half, spilling atmosphere and bodies into the vacuum. Another Nexari vessel, the Galactic Harmony, tried to ram the human flagship in a desperate suicide attack, only to have its navigation systems redirected into a nearby asteroid. Captain Elena Vasquez, commanding the assault frigate Righteous Fury, found herself facing the Veltai science vessel Peaceful Evolution. The ship's crew was broadcasting on all frequencies, pleading for mercy, explaining that they were researchers, not soldiers. They're not even armed, her weapons officer pointed out. Vasquez checked her mission briefing. The Peaceful Evolution had been present at the vote. Its captain had argued eloquently for humanity's extermination, citing the need to preserve galactic stability. They voted for genocide, she said simply. Fire. The frigate's railguns spoke, sending tungsten slugs through the science vessel's hull at a significant fraction of light speed. The ship died in seconds, its research bays and laboratories becoming expanding clouds of frozen debris. By the time the slaughter ended, 43 Council vessels had been destroyed. The few survivors that managed to limp away carried a message that would spread terror throughout the galaxy. The humans were no longer prey. They had become something far more dangerous, predators with a grudge and nothing left to lose. The emergency session convened in the backup command center, buried deep beneath Nexus Prime's continental crust, where hardened quantum communications still functioned through archaic fiber optic networks that predated the Omninet by millennia. High Arbiter Kolonith's mandibles clicked erratically as he studied damage reports streaming in from across Council space. 17 core worlds have lost primary life support. Industrial output has dropped 93%. The hegemony's entire banking system has collapsed, and food distribution networks are failing on 4 to 7 member planets, reported Vice Admiral Nexstar, her tentacles writhing with barely controlled panic. How did we not see this coming? Chancellor Murdane's crystalline form had dimmed to a sickly yellow-green, reflecting her species' state of near-total system shock. The humans infiltrated everything. Every trade agreement, every technology exchange, every diplomatic mission. They were mapping our networks, learning our protocols, preparing for this moment. Ambassador Vexthara slammed her fist against the tactical display, sending hairline cracks across its surface. 50 years. 50 years, they smiled and nodded and pretended to be grateful for our guidance, while secretly preparing to murder us all. High Arbiter Kolonith turned his compound eyes toward the lone human remaining in Council custody. Captain Dante Reeves sat calmly in an energy-restrained field, looking more like a dinner guest than a prisoner. The electromagnetic bonds that should have rendered him helpless flickered intermittently. Another system compromised by humanity's invisible war. Release the containment field, Kolonith ordered. Sir, that's inadvisable, Vice Admiral Nexstar began. It's malfunctioning anyway, the High Arbiter snapped. Besides, what's one human going to do against 12 of us? The field deactivated with a soft chime, and Dante stood slowly, working the stiffness from his shoulders. 12 of you, perhaps. But how many humans are there throughout Council space right now? How many technicians working on your systems? How many diplomats with access to sensitive areas? How many trade representatives who've been mapping your infrastructure for decades? The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humans had been integrated into Council society for over half a century, serving as engineers, consultants, and advisors across the galaxy. They were everywhere, and none of the member species had thought to keep track of them all. You're bluffing, Chancellor Murdane said, though her dimming luminescence suggested otherwise. Your people couldn't have infiltrated our entire civilization. Danny's smile was patient, almost sympathetic. Are we bluffing? Then why haven't you been able to restore communications with Earth? Why can't you regain control of your own fleets? Why are your people dying in the dark while their leaders debate in underground bunkers? As if summoned by his words, another damage report arrived through the emergency channels. The Veltai homeworld's primary fusion reactor had suffered a catastrophic containment failure, taking out the capital city and 3 million civilians. Initial investigations suggested sabotage, but the evidence pointed to systems compromised from within. Vice Admiral Nexstar's tentacles coiled tightly around her thorax, the defensive posture her species adopted when faced with existential threats. What do you want? Terms for surrender, reparations. We can negotiate. Negotiate. Danny's laugh held no humor. You voted for our extinction. Every man, woman, and child on Earth was condemned to death by your democratic process. What possible negotiation could there be? High Arbiter Kolonith activated the chamber's emergency protocols, sealing all exits and initiating lockdown procedures. Then we'll extract the shutdown codes from you by force. Our interrogation techniques are quite sophisticated. Feel free to try, Dante replied, settling back into his chair with apparent unconcern. But you might want to check on your sophisticated interrogation equipment first. Kolonith's mandibles clicked rapidly as he accessed the detention center's systems through his neural link. Every torture device, every mind probe, every chemical inducement chamber showed the same status: system offline. Even their backup manual tools had been somehow corrupted, their quantum locks refusing to respond to authorized codes. Impossible, whispered Chancellor Murdane. This facility was built with hardened systems, isolated from all networks. There's no way your people could have compromised it. Your people built it, Donnie corrected. But who do you think they hired to maintain it? Who installed the upgrades and security patches? Who had access to the underlying code for routine maintenance? He leaned forward slightly. You invited us into your homes, your workplaces, your most sensitive facilities. You treated us like useful pets instead of the apex predators we actually are. Through the chamber's reinforced walls, the sound of distant explosions began to echo, not the sharp crack of military ordnance, but the deep, rumbling collapse of infrastructure systems failing in cascade. The backup power grid was next, apparently, followed by the water reclamation systems and atmospheric processors. Ambassador Vexthara serpentine body coiled with desperate fury. Even if you destroy us all, your species will die with us. You're dependent on our technology, our trade networks, our resources, are we? Donna asked mildly. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're the ones who can't survive without your precious automated systems. Humans have been living rough for millennia. We know how to grow food without quantum synthesizers, how to navigate without computer assistance, how to fight without network tactical systems. His expression hardened. Most importantly, we know how to kill without feeling guilty about it. The emergency lighting flickered and died, plunging the chamber into absolute darkness. In the silence that followed, Danny's voice carried clearly to every terrified alien present. The vote was unanimous, wasn't it? 11 species deciding that humanity had no right to exist. The sound of his footsteps echoed off the walls as he moved through the darkness with predatory confidence. I wonder how many of you will be left to regret that decision when the screaming began. It was mercifully brief. Admiral Petra Voss stood in the command center of Earth's Cheyenne Mountain facility, watching holographic displays that showed the systematic collapse of galactic civilization. The screens painted a picture of chaos that would have been unthinkable just days ago. Entire star systems going dark as their automated infrastructure failed. Refugee fleets fleeing toward primitive worlds that still maintain manual systems, and scattered reports of violence as species turned on each other in desperation. Ma'am, we're receiving communication attempts on 17 different emergency frequencies, reported Colonel Marcus Webb, his scarred face illuminated by the glow of jury-rigged equipment that combined human engineering with salvaged alien technology. Surrender offers, ceasefire requests, pleas for humanitarian aid, to route them all to the trash. Voss ordered without looking away from the displays. I want full implementation of Protocol Lazarus across all operational zones. Webb hesitated. Protocol Lazarus was the darkest contingency plan in Earth's arsenal. The complete extermination of galactic civilization's technological base. Once initiated, there would be no going back. Admiral, some of the surrender offers are coming from species that abstained from the vote. The Quintel Federation never supported our extinction. The Quintel Federation didn't oppose it either. Voss replied coldly. They sat silent while genocide was debated and voted on. Complicity is the same as approval. Around the command center, dozens of operators worked at stations that looked more like ritualistic altars than military equipment. Each console represented years of reverse engineering alien technology. Understanding it not just functionally, but conceptually, humans had learned to think like their enemies, to see the galaxy through alien eyes, and then to use that knowledge as a weapon. Lieutenant Sarah Chen looked up from her station with barely contained excitement. Admiral, the Nexari banking protocols are fully compromised. I can crash their entire economic system with a single command sequence. Do it, Voss ordered, but make it slow. I want them to watch their civilization burn credit by credit. The Nexari had been among the most vocal supporters of Earth's extermination, arguing that humans were an economic parasite that needed to be eliminated for the good of galactic commerce. Now their currency would become worthless digital noise. Their trade networks would collapse, and their crystal cities would go dark as energy became unaffordable. Ma'am, Priority Alpha signal from the Outer Rim, called out Sergeant Major Rodriguez, his augmented arm interfacing directly with communication arrays that span multiple dimensions. Captain Blackthorn reports successful infiltration of the Veltai research stations. She's requesting permission to release the bioweapons. Voss paused. The Veltai research stations contain viruses and pathogens designed to target specific genetic markers, weapons of mass destruction that could wipe out entire species. Releasing them would cross a line from which humanity could never return. Denied, she said finally. We're not genocidal monsters, no matter what they made us become. Destroy the research and eliminate the scientists, but leave the bioweapons contained. Copy that, Rodriguez replied, though his expression suggested he thought the Admiral was being too merciful. The holographic displays suddenly flared with new data as another phase of the operation commenced. Across the galaxy, human sleeper agents who had spent decades establishing themselves in alien societies activated simultaneously. Maintenance workers became saboteurs, trade representatives became assassins, diplomatic staff became warlords commanding resources they'd helped accumulate. Captain Elena Vasquez's voice crackled through the speakers. From her position aboard the Righteous Fury, now leading a small fleet of captured Council vessels, Nexus Prime is burning Admiral. We've taken control of their orbital manufacturing platforms and turned their own defense systems against the surface. The Council's backup government lasted about 30 minutes before we've entered their bunker to vacuum. Casualties? Voss asked. Total. On their side, we lost 2 ships when they tried to ram our formation, but damage was minimal. The aliens are getting desperate. They're throwing everything they have at us, including unarmed civilian vessels, through the command center's reinforced windows. Earth looked deceptively peaceful in the afternoon sunlight. Cities bustled with activity as if nothing had changed, though every human on the planet knew they were fighting for their species' survival. Children attended schools that had become recruitment centers. Factories that once produced consumer goods now manufactured weapons. Scientists who had spent their careers on peaceful research were developing new ways to kill. Admiral, we're detecting massive refugee movements toward the galactic rim, reported Colonel Webb. Looks like some of the smaller species are trying to flee to systems beyond our operational range. Let them run, Voss decided, but make sure they understand the price of returning. Any species that enters human-controlled space without explicit permission gets the same treatment as the Council. Members, a new alert chimed across the command center as long-range sensors detected something unexpected. The Corvin, the primitive species that humanity had uplifted years ago, were moving their fleets toward Council space, not fleeing like refugees, but advancing like predators sensing wounded prey. It looks like our allies have decided to join the party, Webb observed with grim satisfaction. The Corvin were no longer the Stone Age species that humanity had first encountered. Decades of human guidance had transformed them into something formidable warriors who combined primitive savagery with advanced technology, creating a hybrid military doctrine that their enemies couldn't predict or counter. Signal the Corvin fleet, Voss ordered. Tell them the galaxy is open hunting season. Any Council species is fair game, but I want prisoners taken when possible. We'll need workers to rebuild what we're tearing down, as Earth's sun set on what might be the last day of galactic civilization as it had existed for millennia. Admiral Voss allowed herself a moment of reflection. Humanity had been judged and condemned by their betters, sentenced to extinction for the crime of being too successful, too adaptable, too human. Now those same judges were learning what it meant to face a species that had evolved not in peace, but in endless conflict. Humans didn't just win wars, they rewrote the rules of warfare itself, turning their enemies' strengths into fatal weaknesses. The galaxy had voted for humanity's destruction. Humanity was returning the favor with compound interest. The battle of Kepler's Gate erupted when the last functional elements of the Galactic Council fleet made their desperate stand at the system's primary hyperspace junction. Admiral Petra Voss had anticipated this moment, driven to the edge of extinction. The surviving alien forces would eventually stop running and turn to fight with the fury of the doomed. The Defiance Edge dropped out of hyperspace at the head of a human armada that would have been impossible to imagine just months ago. Sleek Earth-built destroyers flew alongside captured Nexari dreadnoughts, their hulls modified with human weapons systems. Corvin berserker ships flanked the formation like attack dogs, their crews howling battle songs across open comm channels. Contact. Multiple vectors, reported Lieutenant Commander Kozlov, his voice tight with concentration. Veltai heavy cruisers moving to attack position, backed by hegemony carrier groups. Estimate 300 enemy vessels across all classes. Voss studied the tactical display with predatory satisfaction. The aliens had managed to scrape together the largest fleet in recorded history. Ships from dozens of species united in their desperation to stop humanity's rampage across the galaxy. It wouldn't be enough. Signal all units, she ordered. Battle formation Omega. Today we finish what they started. The opening exchange lit up the void like a miniature galaxy being born. Plasma beams that could vaporize small moons lance across the darkness, meeting shields that bent space-time itself. Human kinetic weapons, simple tungsten rods, accelerated to near-light speed, punched through energy barriers that had protected alien civilizations for millennia. The Veltai cruiser Eternal Wisdom died first, its crystalline hull shattering under a concentrated barrage from 3 human destroyers. The explosion was so violent it temporarily blinded sensors across both fleets, creating a brief moment of eerie silence before the battle resumed with redoubled fury. Captain Elena Vasquez, commanding the captured Nexari dreadnought Retributions, found herself facing a formation of hegemony battleships that moved with the desperate coordination of the cornered. Their plasma cannons carved glowing scars across her ship's armor, while point defense systems tried frantically to stop the swarm of human torpedoes streaking toward them. Direct hit on forward sections 7 through 12, her damage control officer reported as the ship shuddered under repeated impacts. We've lost main power to the primary weapon systems. Switch to backup protocols, Vasquez ordered, her hands dancing across controls that merged human tactical doctrine with stolen alien technology. Route power through the secondary grids and prepare for ramming speed. The Retribution's edge lurched forward like a wounded predator, its damaged hull streaming atmosphere and debris. The hegemony battleship Supreme Authority tried to evade, while human modifications to the Nexari drive systems gave the dreadnought impossible maneuverability. The collision was catastrophic, 2 massive vessels merging in an explosion that registered as a minor stellar event on long-range sensors. Both ships died, taking their crews with them. Vasquez's last transmission was a string of coordinates marking weak points in the enemy formation, her final act of defiance allowing 3 human destroyers to punch through the alien lines. The Corvin fleet struck the enemy's flank like a pack of rabid wolves, their primitive battle madness enhanced by human tactical systems. Boarding pods launched from berserker ships punched through alien hulls, disgorging warriors who fought with stone axes enhanced by quantum sharpening fields. The cultural disconnect was devastating. Aliens who relied on automated defenses found themselves facing opponents who preferred close combat and cared nothing for their own survival. The Veltai science vessel Progressive Knowledge was overrun in minutes, its crew of researchers and technicians unable to comprehend the savagery being unleashed in their corridors. Corvid warriors carved through opponents with weapons that combined Stone Age brutality with Space Age lethality, leaving behind scenes that would haunt the nightmares of any survivors. Admiral Voss watched the slaughter unfold with clinical detachment, her tactical mind cataloging losses and gains with mechanical precision. Humanity was winning, but the cost was higher than anticipated. The Earth Destroyer Vengeance broke apart under concentrated fire from 6 alien cruisers, its crew of 400 vaporized in seconds. The modified freighter New Hope managed to ram an enemy carrier before its own ammunition stores detonated, taking both vessels and 8,000 lives with it. Admiral, emergency signal from the Righteous Fury, Kozlov reported. Captain Martinez reports critical damage to their quantum drive. They're requesting permission to initiate Protocol Zero. Voss felt her blood chill. Protocol Zero was the ultimate weapon of controlled quantum cascade that would turn a ship's drive core into a miniature black hole, devastating everything within a light-minute radius. It was also completely lethal to the vessel initiating it. Granted, she said quietly, tell Captain Martinez it's been an honor. The Righteous Fury changed course toward the densest concentration of enemy vessels, its crew working frantically to overload their quantum containment systems. While alien fire tore through their hull, the ship was barely holding together when it reached the center of the enemy formation, its captain's final words echoing across all human frequencies. For Earth, for humanity, for the children who will never know we were here. The quantum cascade began as a point of absolute darkness that seemed to drink light itself. Then space-time twisted, reality bent, and a sphere of annihilation expanded outward at the speed of causality itself. 17 alien vessels, including the dreadnoughts and a Veltai command carrier, simply ceased to exist, their matter and energy becoming part of a temporary gravitational anomaly that pulled debris from across the battlefield into its hungry, embraced dot. When the cascade finally stabilized and collapsed, it left behind empty space where thousands of beings had died in an instant. The silence that followed was broken only by the crackling of damaged communication systems and the quiet prayers of survivors on both sides. The battle raged for 6 more hours, ship after ship dying in the darkness between stars. By the time it ended, the human fleet had been reduced by 60%, but the alien formation was completely destroyed. Of the 300 council vessels that had made their last stand at Kepler's gate, fewer than a dozen managed to escape into hyperspace. Admiral, Voss stood alone on her bridge, surrounded by the aftermath of humanity's bloodiest victory. They had won, but the price would be remembered for generations. If there were any generations left to remember, 3 weeks after Kepler's gate, the surviving members of the Galactic Council made their final gambit from the fortress world of Kronos Alpha. The planet was a monument to paranoia, 30 layers of planetary shields, automated defense platforms that could sterilize entire fleets, and a core of pure neutronium that made it virtually indestructible. It was here that the last representatives of 23 species prepared to unleash their ultimate weapon. Chancellor Murdane, her crystalline form now cracked and dim from weeks of constant stress, stood before the assembled delegates in the deepest bunker on the planet. Around her, the survivors of galactic civilization looked more like refugees than the rulers of 1,000 worlds. Many species were represented by a single individual, the sole survivor of cultures that had endured for millions of years. The Doomsday Protocol is our last option, she announced, her voice carrying harmonics of desperation. If we cannot defeat the humans directly, we can ensure they inherit nothing but ashes. High Arbiter Kolonith, one of his forearms hanging, useless from wounds suffered during the evacuation of Nexus Prime, clicked his mandibles in reluctant agreement. The quantum resonance cascade will destabilize every star within 500 light years. Nothing will survive, not us, not them, not any world caught in the effect radius. Ambassador Vexthara coiled around herself, her serpentine form trembling with barely controlled fury. Billions of years of evolution, countless civilizations, entire archives of knowledge and art, all to be destroyed. Because we cannot stomach the thought of humans ruling the galaxy. Better the galaxy burn than be ruled by primates, hissed Vice Admiral Nexstar, her tentacles writhing with grief for the hegemony worlds that had already fallen to human occupation. They are a virus, a corruption that will spread until nothing pure remains. The Doomsday Protocol had been developed in secret over millennia, a weapon so terrible that its very existence had been known only to the highest levels of council leadership. It required the combined quantum signatures of at least 15 member species to activate signature E's that were coded into the genetic structure of each species' leadership caste. Today, they had exactly 20-3 deep beneath Kronos Alpha. Ancient machinery hummed to life as authorization codes were entered one by one. Each signature brought the weapon closer to activation. Each confirmation another step toward galactic extinction. The device itself was beautiful in its simplicity, a crystalline matrix that would synchronize the quantum fluctuations of stellar cores across hundreds of light years, causing them to collapse simultaneously in a cascade of supernovas. The humans had made one crucial error in their campaign of vengeance. They had assumed their enemies would choose survival over spite. Aboard the Defiant's Edge, Admiral Petra Voss received the intelligence report with grim recognition. Her remaining fleet, barely 50 vessels cobbled together from Earth forces, and captured alien ships hung in the outer system like wolves watching a dying elk. They couldn't penetrate Kronos Alpha's defenses, but they didn't need to. Humanity's network of agents and saboteurs had been reporting on the Council's final preparations for days. How long until activation? She asked Colonel Webb, who looked like he'd aged a decade in the past month. Half his face was scarred from plasma burns suffered during the evacuation of Europa Station, and his augmented arm sparked occasionally from damage that couldn't be properly repaired. 18 hours. Assuming they don't accelerate the timeline, he replied. Our people on the surface confirm that all necessary genetic keys have been authenticated. They're just running final system checks now. Voss stared at the tactical display showing Kronos Alpha's defensive grid. Even with humanity's technological advantages, storming the fortress world would be suicide. The planet's automated systems could destroy her entire fleet before they penetrated the first layer of shields. But letting the Council complete their doomsday weapon wasn't an option either. Signal Captain Reeves on the surface, she ordered. It's time for Plan Omega. Captain Dante Reeves had spent 3 weeks infiltrating Kronos Alpha's deepest levels, using forged credentials and stolen access codes to position himself at the heart of the enemy's last stronghold. The irony wasn't lost on him. The same diplomatic immunity that had protected him during council sessions now allowed him to walk freely through their most secure facility. He stood in the Doomsday Protocol's control chamber, watching alien technicians make final adjustments to machinery that would murder entire star systems. The device was a work of art, really curves of impossible geometry that hurt to look at directly. Crystalline matrices that sang with harmonics that existed outside normal space-time. It was also completely dependent on a centralized control system that assumed its operators were loyal to the cause. The humans had taught the galaxy many things over the past decades. Perhaps the most important lesson was that loyalty was a luxury that apex predators couldn't afford. Reeves checked his chronometer. 17 hours, 53 minutes until activation. Just enough time for humanity's final lesson in advanced warfare. Never trust your enemies to die quietly. His hand moved to the concealed device grafted beneath his skin, a quantum virus that had taken Earth's best programmers 3 years to develop. Once activated, it would propagate through every connected system on Kronos Alpha, turning the planet's own defenses against its inhabitants. The automated platforms that protected the world would instead bombard it. The shields that kept attackers out would trap the defenders inside. The doomsday weapon itself would become the instrument of its creator's destruction. Computer, initiate emergency maintenance protocol, Reeves said quietly, pressing his palm against the nearest interface. Authentication required. The system responded in soothing harmonics. Emergency override. Captain Dante Reeves, Earth Defense Corps, diplomatic authorization code Omega 770. There was a pause as the system processed the request. For a moment, Reeves wondered if his forged credentials would be sufficient. Then the chamber's lighting shifted to maintenance amber, and he smiled. Override accepted. Beginning maintenance cycle. The quantum virus uploaded silently, spreading through Kronos Alpha's networks like digital cancer. Within minutes, it had infected every major system on the planet, rewriting core protocols and establishing new command hierarchies. The fortress world's own defenses would become humanity's weapon, wielded by the very people the Council had tried to exterminate. Reeves activated his emergency transmitter, sending a coded burst toward the human fleet. 3 words that would echo through history. The die is cast. Above the planet, Admiral Voss received the signal and allowed herself a cold smile. The galaxy had voted for humanity's extinction. Now they would learn what extinction actually looked like when applied by a species that had perfected the art of war. All ships, battle stations. She ordered, "Today we finish this." The transformation of Kronos Alpha began with silence. In the deepest bunker of the fortress world, Chancellor Murdane stared at her control console as every indicator light flickered from green to amber to red. Around her, the surviving council members watched in growing horror as their most secure systems betrayed them. One by one. "Impossible," whispered High Arbiter Kolonith, his compound eyes reflecting the emergency lighting that bathed the command chamber. "These systems are quantum isolated. There's no way for external interference." His words died as the bunker's massive blast doors began to cycle open, their fail-safes overridden by malicious code that treated security protocols like gentle suggestions. The hiss of equalizing atmosphere carried with it the sound of approaching footsteps, measured, confident, utterly human. Captain Dante Reeves walked into the chamber like a man entering his own home, his diplomatic community now revealed as the perfect camouflage for humanity's final gambit. Behind him came a squad of Earth Defense Corps Marines, their armor scarred from weeks of fighting, but their weapons gleaming with lethal efficiency. The vote was 11-1, Reeves said conversationally, as if discussing the weather. 11 species deciding that humanity had no right to exist. "I've always wondered, did any of you stop to consider what we might do about that?" Chancellor Murdane's crystalline form pulsed with desperate energy as she lunged for the Doomsday Protocol's activation switch. Her hand never reached it. Marine Sergeant Torres put 3 plasma rounds through her torso, reducing the silicon-based delegate to cooling fragments that clinked against the chamber floor. Like broken glass, High Arbiter Kolonith attempted to trigger a neural command through his implants, only to discover that the quantum virus had severed his connection to the planet's systems. "You cannot stop what we have begun," he chittered, mandibles clicking with defiant fury. "The cascade is already reprogrammed," Reeves interrupted. "Your doomsday weapon is now under our control. Congratulations, you've just handed humanity the power to sterilize any star system we choose." Through the bunker's reinforced walls, the sound of distant explosions echoed as Kronos Alpha's own defense platforms turned their weapons inward. Automated systems that had protected the world for millennia now bombarded population centers and military installations with clinical efficiency. The planet's shields, designed to keep attackers out, instead trapped the defenders inside a burning tomb. Ambassador Vexthara coiled around herself in the protective posture her species adopted. When facing death, why, she hissed, you could have negotiated, found compromise, sought peace. Reeves laughed, the sound carrying no humor whatsoever. You voted to exterminate our children, our elderly, our artists and scientists and dreamers. You declared war on our very existence. His expression hardened. We're simply better at war than you ever imagined. Above the dying planet, Admiral Petra Voss watched the final phase of humanity's campaign unfold through the bridge. Displays of the Defiant's edge. Kronos Alpha burned like a miniature sun, its own defenses consuming everything they had once protected. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out as human agents activated sleeper programs that had been embedded in alien systems for decades. Ma'am, we're receiving surrender transmissions from 4 to 7 different species, reported Lieutenant Commander Kozlov. They're offering complete capitulation, tribute payments, territorial concessions. Ignore them, Voss ordered. Surrender was an option before they voted for genocide. Now there are only two categories of alien species, those who are dead, and those who are about to be. The systematic extermination of galactic civilization took another 3 months to complete. Some species fought to the bitter end, their military forces dying in futile battles against an enemy that had turned their own technology against them. Others simply collapsed as their automated systems failed, and their population starved in the dark. A few managed to flee beyond the galactic rim, carrying nothing but survival supplies and bitter memories of the empire they had lost. When it was over, humanity found itself alone among the stars. The orbital cities above Earth buzzed with activity, as the species that had once been considered primitive savages began the monumental task of rebuilding galactic civilization in their own image. Human colonies expanded into abandoned star systems, terraforming worlds that had been stripped bare by their former inhabitants. The great trade networks that had once connected thousands of worlds were rebuilt with human technology, human oversight, and human values die in the ruins of what had been. Nexus Prime. Earth engineers erected a monument, a simple black obelisk inscribed with 8 billion names. Every human who had lived on Earth when the Council voted for their extinction was remembered there. Their names carved in quantum crystal that would endure until the heat death of the universe. Captain Dante Reeves, now promoted to Admiral and serving as humanity's first galactic governor, stood before the monument during its dedication ceremony. The irony wasn't lost on him. He was delivering this speech from the same chamber where the Council had once debated humanity's fate. They called us a virus, he said. His words broadcast across 1,000 human worlds, a corruption that would spread until nothing pure remained. They were right. In a way, we did spread. We did corrupt their perfect order. We took their galaxy and made it ours. He paused, looking out at an audience composed entirely of humans, the only sentient species left in this corner of the universe. But we are not the virus they thought we were. We are adaptation. We are evolution. We are what happens when you try to kill something that refuses to die. His voice carried the weight of absolute conviction. The galaxy voted for our extinction. We voted to survive. Today, we can see which vote mattered more. In the archives beneath New Geneva, historians worked to preserve the records of the species that humanity had destroyed, complete databases of alien art, literature, science, and culture were maintained in crystalline storage matrices, ensuring that future generations would remember what had been lost. It was an act of respect for the dead, even if that respect had come too late for the living. The children born in the years following the Galactic War grew up in a universe shaped entirely by human hands. They learned of the great alien civilizations as mythology, stories of beings who had once ruled the stars before humanity claimed its birthright. Some wondered what might have been different if the Council had chosen cooperation over domination. But those were academic questions. The galaxy belonged to humanity now, and it would remain so for as long as the species endured. 8 billion lives had been condemned to extinction by alien arrogance. In return, humanity had taught the universe a lesson that would never need repeating. Some votes carried consequences that last forever. The stars themselves bore witness to humanity's final verdict on the Council's decision. Where once dozens of species had thrived among the ancient constellations, now only one remained, alone, uncontested, and utterly victorious. The vote had been 11 to 1. The result was absolute.